My name is Adam. I'm owner and operator of Lilley LLC here in Connecticut, and I am a hardscaper.
Okay, Adam, let's get started here to get to know a little bit more about yourself and your background into this industry. Can you give our audience a little bit of context about, your background in the industry and how you got started here?
So I had no clue I was going to get into this industry. I went to college, actually, I have my Bachelor of Fine Arts as a painter, and I didn't like working outside as a kid. I didn't like the summer heat and wearing boots and all that. And then I'd say after college, I just realized I needed to be outdoors. I needed to be working with my hands and still making and creating. And so I started just typical landscape, cutting grass, trimming shrubs, that kind of stuff. And I had a customer who asked for a walkway, and I started looking at what's out there, what people are doing, and fell in love with it. And it just has taken off since.
So, give us a little bit of context as to when it was that you started your, say, hardscaping side of things. When you started getting into this landscapes construction.
I'd say it's probably been about seven years ago. I did my first serious project. My father taught me a bunch of the basics. He's a foreman for a large construction company, and you'll still see him if you look at my Instagram every now and then. He comes out and operates. But yeah, probably about 7 years ago, started getting into it, and this was the first year that's it. It's full time. No more of the maintenance stuff. It's just hardscaping.
What made you go from dropping the maintenance then and then to go all out into hardscaping this year?
It got difficult to kind of shuffle both. They're almost two business models. You have your maintenance, and you're running mowers and trimmers and that kind of stuff, and you're making a certain amount per hour for the business versus hardscaping. You need bigger equipment. It's all about mechanizing these days and trying to cut back on the actual physical labor of it. So they became two different businesses, and as basically kind of a one-man show, it got too hard to shuffle both. And this year, especially, I think with everyone staying home, they're spending a lot more on their backyards, and it just became kind of a no-brainer to really dive into it. I get to flex my creative muscles a little bit more. I enjoy more. You get to see that finished product and turn people's backyards into something amazing. So I just decided to take the leap this year, and that was it.
Nice, awesome, and no regrets as so far this year going all out hardscaping.
No regrets. Trust me, I don't think I'll ever go back to cutting grass.
So, getting into your business a little bit more, let's stick on this subject and talk about hardscaping. What was it that where did you learn about hardscaping and getting into this industry? Because you started with the maintenance side of things. How did you get that experience and that knowledge to start your first hardscape installation and then move forward into hardscaping?
It's kind of been just natural and fluid. I think when I had the first customer approach me for doing a walkway, they saw my business card. I had the golden ratio was the background for it, because I like the idea of the science and math and everything balancing with nature and being beautiful. And they said, we want that in our walkway. And that was the first thing they said to me. And that's why they chose me, was off that business card. And I was like, wait, what? So I started just Googling, and I went to suppliers and started looking at product, and I was like, this can be done. This is cool. And then I talked with my father, who just has taught me so much. And he taught me, base, excavation, blah, blah, all those things you have to do. And I just dove in, honestly. It's just books, Googling, at the time, I actually didn't have any social media or anything. This is the first year I've really been on social media, which has been an eye opener, because now you just see the sky's the limit.
With that being said, you mentioned with your maintenance side of things, one of your customers came up to you and asked you for a walkway. From that point until now, I'm sure the way that your leads are coming into your business have changed. So can you speak a little bit about that evolution and what you saw there, and then where the majority of your leads coming from at this moment in your business?
So at that time, I did the basic, put into the local newspaper ads, that kind of stuff. Hand out your cards everywhere you go, talk to people. And now it's just been word of mouth. The projects have kind of grown to a point where, the next door neighbor sees you, people walking down the street. They have family members who come over and say, wow, who did that? And you just keep getting those calls. So now I don't do any kind of advertising, any of that stuff. And they just kind of keep coming fluidly. I'm very lucky that, you know, you just build up your name. I guess word of mouth is always the best, you know, advertising.
And with what you're posting on Instagram, these beautiful projects, are you seeing some traction with Instagram in terms of maybe a customer here and there messaging you?
Yeah, honestly, most of my customers, regardless of age, they have their own Instagrams and they follow me. So they see what I'm doing. They know they know where I'm at and they know where they are in the schedule because as a, you know, kind of a one man company, my timelines are a little bit longer than I'd say a lot of other guys. So they like to follow it, and then they also get ideas for their own projects. So I have clients that, you know, I'm not going to be working on for until 2021, but they're watching what I'm doing now. So Instagram has been a huge tool to really grow and show people what you're doing and what you can offer them.
Yeah, let's get into your business model a little bit here because it is interesting and it is something that I stuck with for a long time as well. The one man show here. So is it intentional for you to stick with that one man show, being that this is your first year going all out into hardscaping? Is this an intentional move to keep your overhead expenses low and whatnot?
Uh, yes and no. So my fear is I like to be hands on, and I think it gets really tough as you grow when you're the owner to constantly be hands on. You obviously have other things you need to deal with, but I design it and then I like to install. I like making sure my cuts are clean. All those little details are things I put in. And then the other thing is it's really tough to find good help. I think everybody's in that same ballpark where you really try. I've tried a few people out. I did have help over the winter from a buddy of mine, and then another guy, my sister's boyfriend, actually was a fantastic guy, worked for a couple months this summer. But other than that, it's tough to find good help. I would love to get at least somebody, you know, that I can really rely on to help me, because when the projects are averaging 1,000 to 1,500 square feet, and it just kind of gets a little bit daunting. Yeah, so it's tough. There's pros and cons. I get to really be part of the project, and the customers honestly become friends by the end of it. I'm again very lucky where everyone's been very patient. They know that I'm kind of alone, so they don't put that pressure on me of, hey, you know, are you going to be out of here in 2 weeks? They know that it's going to get done at a certain pace, but it's worked out. You know, I'm still young. I'm only 31, so it works for now. I don't think it's something I'm going to be able to keep up, especially as, you know, I did have to turn down a lot of projects just because of timelines. People are putting in pools, all that, and they don't want to hear, yeah, I'll get to you in November when it's June. You know, it's not always the best thing to tell them. So then they go elsewhere. And that's one thing that I think if I found somebody or even two guys would be really nice, because you boost that production times and then you can land kind of more projects.
So with that being said, I know from my experience, one of the big questions I used to get was, well, how big is your crew? Or how many guys do you have working for you? Because the customer almost wants to know that they have, not that they're in good hands, but that the project is going to go and be completed in a timely manner. Is this something that you've seen friction in your business? Is this something that people still ask you, or is this something that people already know about your business because you know, because of Instagram or whatever it may be that you've already communicated to them? Is this something that you've had friction with, basically?
Absolutely. Honestly, I think questions. I kind of have a little bit of a baby face, so I look young, and they hear, you know, hey, I'm putting in a pool. We want 2,000 square feet, a fire pit, a water feature, lighting, yada yada. And I come in and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to do it. And they're like, well, how many guys? Just me. How long? You know, a month. And it's, I think a lot of people are like, wait, what? Are you serious? And it is what it is. Some people, I'm sure, get a little put off by it, but by the end of it always goes well. I'm very open, very upfront about everything. So I tell people right off the bat when I meet them, I'm kind of a one-man crew. So it's going to take me a little bit longer than other guys, but hey, I'm the owner. I'm on site. I care about what I'm doing. So I'm going to give you the best quality I could possibly give you. And that's, you know, almost a selling point. It's a trade-off. Some people want it done quick and want you out of there. Other people really want it done right, and they want to know that, you know, there's a lot of contractors out there that will say they meet with the client, but then they're never on site, and So there's that train of communication they have to go through if something comes up, versus if it's me, just walk out the back door and I'm standing there. So that works well. And then because people, again, social media has been such a great tool, see what I'm doing, there's a lot more trust. You go into it with trust, so they know what they're getting.
I'm sure you can flip that, like you said, into a selling point where it's all about quality control when it comes to installing these, and you have the most quality control in your business because it's just you, and you don't have somebody else in the crew doing something that you have to oversee. You're doing everything, so you have that quality control, and that can be a huge selling point to customers.
Absolutely.
As a one-man show, equipment must be huge for you.
Equipment is everything. Absolutely everything.
So what kind of equipment do you run in your business on a, say, daily basis that makes your life easier as a one-man show? Just to give our, our guys out there that may be starting up or maybe wanting to pursue the one-man show because that appeals to their personality. What kind of equipment would you say, like, starting up or getting into this as a one-man show is crucial?
That's a whole big topic, because honestly, I know a lot of people shut them out, but Caleb Allman always says, get the best equipment you can afford. And so that's where I've been putting the money, is in the equipment. So Ditch Witch, having one of those mini track skid steers is like having 2 or 3 guys just right off the bat. That is a no-brainer. And then little things, I used to cut everything by hand with angle grinders and cut-off saws and all that, but now I have the IQ table saw, the MS362, and that thing just, besides the dustless, which is amazing and I think very important, the dustless, but the clean cuts and you're not bending over and holding that saw is a no-brainer. That's a big one. So yeah, I mean, Pave Tool, they make everything. Pave Tech, they make a lot of stuff. They're all fantastic. Anything you can get that's gonna kind of lighten the labor load on you. I'm 6 foot, but I'm slim. It's especially laying slabs. I did that, what's the name? The Aurora project. And those were Teco slabs. And those things are not light. So for a one crew guy, how do you lay all those things? So that was the M-Quip, the back vac, that thing. And I know it's not really supposed to be for one guy. It's awkward to hold, but with the big pad on it, it lifts them fine. And I'm not bending over anymore. And that's the biggest thing is, I've seen guys say, prepare for the future. I'm 31 now, but I will be 40. I will be 45. I will be 50. I got to take care of myself now so that when I'm 50, I could still be working, So mechanization is everything.
Absolutely. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself there, but just a really interesting topic in terms of, we haven't had somebody on the show that is a one-man show, and lots of interesting things to take away from this interview for guys wanting to get into this industry, and knowing that it is possible to be a one-man show, and not necessarily staying like that, because like you said, you got to take care of your body, take care of yourself, and you don't quite know what the future holds in store, but ultimately growing beyond that one-man show will help your body. But in terms of getting into this industry, getting a start, it doesn't have to be high investment right away. It can be what you can afford, and it can be yourself.
Absolutely. Agreed. Like, if there's anything I would start out with, it's a Ditch Witch. A good truck, a Mason dump truck, maybe like a 1-ton dump, and a Ditch Witch. Those things, that changed everything for me. And it was, they're not cheap, but they're not killer. You can make the monthly payment if you have the jobs. That's definitely the route I suggest.
And even renting. I mean, I'm a big proponent of renting, and especially where we do work, there's a lot of tight access, and then there's sometimes some good access. So we rent specific to that job, basically.
Yeah, no, up until last year, I rented everything. Like I said, I have my bachelor's, and it costs a lot of money to go to college these days. So I didn't have a lot of, revenue. So I was renting like crazy. And last year I bought the Ditch Witch, and this year I bought a Cat mini excavator. And, now there's obviously no going back, but for a long time, yeah, it works. If you can manage it, renting is fine. You don't have to worry about maintaining it and and all those kind of things, but you still bring it onto the job site.
Now, getting back to dealing with customers, getting into your sales process here. So once that customer contacts you, where do you take it from there? Do you have a pre-qualification process? Any questions that you ask them, whether it's over the phone or email that they contact you? How do you get to scheduling that first consultation?
That's definitely changing. At first, obviously, it was anything that came my way, you get out there as fast as possible and talk to them. Now I'm starting to kind of vet them a little bit over the phone, where it's what are you looking for? What's the size of the project? Just rough things, so I have an idea. Because if they tell me, yeah, I'm doing a driveway and I want it done in a month, then chances are I'm not your guy. As much as I would love to meet you and do the project, it's just not for me. So I do vet, their timeline, the scale of the project, and see where they're coming from. Obviously, everything we're up against is numbers, and the numbers vary so much too. So it's tough, but I try getting some idea of a budget out of them to make sure there's something reasonable. Connecticut is a very small state, but there are times that I'm driving, most days actually, I drive an hour each way. So if I'm going to be driving out there, even to meet you, again, being a one-man show, this is one of the negatives, is they say, I want to meet at 5. Well, that actually means that I'm leaving the job site early, and that means productivity stops. So it's getting to that point where I have to make sure that if I come out and meet you, this is something that's viable. This could go somewhere. Obviously, not all leads lead somewhere, but hopefully it goes somewhere. So there is a little bit of a process now. I also try to upsell the point of, I try to design more. If you are just looking for a 20 by 20 basic patio, we don't care what it looks like, we don't plan on staying in the house forever, then hey, this might not be the project for us to work together on. If you're looking for something unique, you're going to live there for forever, and you want your family to enjoy it, then that's more my talk.
Very interesting. Yeah. And I like the point that you mentioned there, where since it is just you really have to focus on, if you're leaving the job site early to meet a customer, that's time taken away from a job site that's already going to take a little bit longer, since you are the one-man show. And so it has to be something that you are fairly confident is a good lead for your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
So once you have that consultation set up, first off, do you charge for the initial consultation, or how do you go with that?
I don't. I listened to Evan's podcast, and I've heard a lot of people say, hey, you're going out, you're taking the time, you need to bill accordingly for that. I think that's something that probably not next year, but somewhere down the line, it is going to change, because they do usually end up being an hour, 2 hours. These consultations, you go out, you're talking, you're throwing around ideas, product ideas. If you bring a transit or a zip level, whatever you have, and it takes time, and time, when you have a business, time is money, so I don't charge now. I do foresee that changing.
And having said that, with that initial consultation, when you're going out there, what are you asking them? And are you bringing out samples in that initial consultation to give them an idea of what product you typically work with? Or how does that first consultation go with you?
So I usually ask them, I don't like to push anything on them at first. So I ask them, hey, what are you looking for? Have you looked at any catalogs? Have you gone to any suppliers? I always obviously carry books, and in cases I do have, say, the InLight, the Bob box they call it, that's got all the lighting, because it's really great to give people hands-on, see it right in their own yard. So we do that. I give them some ideas. I show pictures of other work, and honestly, now again, with Instagram being such a good tool, you could show people other companies' work and say, hey, this wasn't mine, but look at this. This is something we could do. Isn't this beautiful? So I try throwing around as many ideas as possible, getting an idea of, do you like that contemporary look, classic look? What's their style basically, and how can we capture that and bring that to life?
From there, is every project designed for you? Do you create a design for every project? Is that standard, or is that something you ask the customer, hey, do you see my vision here, or do you want a 3D design, or how do you take that?
So people, they're not in the industry. I don't think they always see it. A lot of times they actually question, like, wait, is that possible? So I try to give them designs. Again, it's tough to carve out the time and sit down and really create a 3D rendering for them, but I do try to do that, especially even just from my side. It makes the project more enjoyable if there's a design element. if you're pushing, the boundaries every time, it's a lot more fun. Otherwise, then you're just, one of my buddies says, I pick a block up, I put a block down. I don't want to do that. I like to design something. And again, I have my Bachelor of Fine Arts. So to me, this is art. This is, there's a lot of guys out there that they are so talented and they make it in art form. So I try coming up with a unique design so that they don't look over there to their neighbor's yard and say, yeah, we all have the same patio. I want their patio to be their backyard, their dream backyard.
When it comes to landing that project, so you've consulted with them, you kind of have an idea of what they want, you give them a 3D design. Where do you take it from there to land that job? Because it can be time consuming for you, especially given your business model, to go out there one more time to present a 3D design. Do you send it over email so that they can look it over and then talk to them? Where do you take that from there to land that job?
Everything for me is in person. If they ask for pictures, screenshots, whatever through email, absolutely, I'll send everything your way. But for the most part, I like to be hands-on and really be with the people. I think that's kind of what does land the project, is when they get to know you, they build that trust more, and they can see, hey, I care about what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. So that's what's going to give you the best product. You could be super talented, but if you don't love what you do, are you going to put the same energy into it? So I always try being available, and as tough as that it can be sometimes, because time is very limited. I always try making it a point to go sit down with them, talk with them, go over everything in person. That's huge.
What are your payment plans like? Because I'm sure this is something that you've probably had to experiment with. You've probably had to change up. Especially considering a project like that Aurora project, which is big, especially considering it's just you. What are your payment plans like in terms of installation payments or anything like that?
So I follow the model of basically thirds. Basically, it's a third when we sign the contract. That way I can order some material and all that. Third the day I start, and then the third, is billed out when we finish. That seems to work pretty well. I watch, money closely. Being a small company, you have to. And I always make sure, we'll say you never rob Peter to pay Paul. No job gets billed out, so I'm buying material for another job or anything like that. I keep my books tight for job to job to job, and it seems to work. Again, if maybe I hire a couple guys, it'll get tight because you can't hold their paychecks while you're waiting to finish a project. But for me, so far, it works out well to do thirds.
And then that brings us to any horror stories that you've had in your business, because typically these are around payments, but anything in general that you've had, whether it's on a job site, during the installation process, or with payments and dealing with customers, any horror story that you'd want to share with the audience, just to allow them to think about it and then maybe to implement something in their business to avoid this from happening to them?
Honestly, we're going to knock on wood over here. No, I have been so fortunate to have some of the best clients I could ask for, and no real horror stories. Honestly, anything I'd say that gets frustrating or difficult comes from the self, basically putting too much pressure on how fast the job gets done or how you foresee it going. And there's always those things that just come up where you're like, oh man, this is not going to work out how I thought, or it's taking too much time, and it gets difficult. But from the client base, payment base, I've been very, 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 very fortunate. So, I think it comes down to having the right clientele, and I've been super lucky. So it's our jobs as contractors too, to know that we can't do every job and not every project is for us. So as much as the client is trying to find their contractor, we have to find the right client. We all have our own niche market, and if you find the right one, you work for the right people, I think things can go really, really great.
And not to beat a dead horse here, Adam, but I keep bringing this up because I feel like you are a case study in terms of operating your business. I don't want to say frugally. Want to say, like, as a one-man show, not many people do this. And if they do this, they stick to the lift and relays. They stick to the simple jobs. But if somebody visits your Instagram page and they see the jobs that you're doing, They wouldn't say this is a one-man show. They would think this is a crew doing this. And I see so many benefits to be able to operate the way you're operating. Flexibility, uh, filling up your schedule much easier, much quicker, because one project is going to take you a longer period of time. Your overhead costs are low, so you're going to make more on that project. And also, you can be super picky with the customers that you bring on because your schedule is so limited. And that there tells me that you've thought about that because you haven't had these horror stories, and you have less customers to deal with throughout any given year. And like I said, you can pick and choose the customers that you take on.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with, lift, relay, maintenance, all that stuff. There's something for everybody. For me, I don't find as much enjoyment in that. So I want to take on new projects. I want to take on very design oriented projects, something that's unique. It could be a huge headache, but it's very rewarding. So yeah, and I chalk up a lot of it to luck. I get the right clientele, especially now that I have kind of the portfolio growing so much, and that word of mouth where they all know I'm going to take longer. I'm kind of a one-man show, all those little details, but they see what they can get. And so they're on board, I'm on board. And that, I think, avoids those horror stories where if you're just transparent with people, you're honest, you're a good person, and yet you have those conversations, then, hey, I mean, the sky's the limit with what we can do in this industry. I think it's growing, and I love what I do. So I'm happy and passionate. There need to be changes. The business model will not work long term. God forbid, say something happened where I got hurt. That means the company basically shuts down. That's not a perfect business model by any means. But yes, I do get to be picky. I do get to make sure the details are done right and everything's how it should go, which is good for both me and the client. But changes will have to happen. That's for sure.
Do you have like a pretty good understanding of what you yourself are capable of in any given day in order to schedule a job and to kind of keep on track of that job for that customer? I ask that because I'm not too far removed from operating the same way that you did. And I used to beat myself up because I would, each day have certain things that I wanted to get done. And it was way more than I could do. And I don't know why that was. Maybe I held myself to a higher level of standard where I could accomplish, but then it would fall into the next day and it would just pile on. And I would feel that stress of those larger jobs that I was taking on by myself. Do you yourself have a similar mindset to that? Or, how do you handle a job that you're getting behind in, especially because it's just yourself?
I'd say I'm in the exact same ballpark. I hold myself to kind of a ridiculous standard, and thank God for having my girlfriend, because she always brings me back down to earth. But yeah, no, it gets daunting, especially dig out days. You dig out 2,000 square foot patio and you see 15 pallets of slab pavers coming in, and you're just like, oh God, how is this going to get done? I try to not focus on the big picture and kind of organize into smaller tasks and say, okay, you know what, here's what I know is the next step. Let's just focus on that. Put on some music, maybe put on a podcast now if I get addicted, and just kind of get into it. It's tough, listening to Evan from Pride, his podcast. I like that he said, he doesn't really like to get his emails till the end of the day. That's something that really just kind of clicked in my head, where I said, I get texts, calls, all that. And again, it all comes down to being the one-man crew, that if I have to text back, if I have to call back, productivity halts. It just stops. It doesn't slow, it stops. So I think there's a need for structure, for timeline of when do I, do my receipts? When do I do my billing? When do I do my designs, versus when I'm on a job? And yeah, especially this year, I'm sure everybody feels the delays of material not getting there on time, all those kind of things. Again, transparency with the client. You try to be honest and say, listen, maybe I overshot a bit. Product is delayed. This didn't show up. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep chugging along. We're gonna get this done. And again, luck. my clients have all been super understanding. I can't be even more grateful for the fact that they get it, you know. So it's about patience. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I hear you. It's one of those things. Every day, it's just you come home and you're like, I did not. I don't think I don't remember the last time I've come home and said I got everything I wanted to do today done. That has not happened in a very, very, very long time.
Definitely. Yeah, and I asked that because I can totally empathize with that. And like I said, not too far removed from the same business model. So I knew that it wasn't sustainable for my own mindset because of that. And like you said, I would come home every day and I wouldn't feel like I accomplished what I needed to get done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that becomes stressful, you
Yeah.
know, and that's not a good way to live. Even if you love what you're doing, that's not a good feeling to kind of always carry around. So again, things that we all have to keep growing and something I got to learn to kind of deal with. And I think
Yeah.
maybe some of those tasks you find a guy, and as much as you want to always be hands on, sometimes I'm probably just going to have to learn that I have limited time. I have to give that to a guy and trust him and teach him. And, you know, hopefully things keep moving along the right way.
Yeah, and I just ask because I'm trying to cover everything here, the pros and cons to this type of business model, because I mean, there's some obvious pros and there's some obvious cons, but it's very interesting. Do you ever subcontract out certain phases of the project? For example, I know when I first started, my big thing was subcontracting the excavation because I knew I wasn't set up for that, but I was set up for being able to do everything else. Do you do anything like that with your business?
I don't. You know, it can get tricky if you don't know the right guys. I had buddies who had equipment, so sometimes I would take him on for a day if I could and just pay him to have the excavator and stuff there. But I made sure I was always there telling them what I needed done because they weren't hardscapers. They just had the equipment. They were in some other industry or something like that. You know, when I first started, I was digging stuff out by hand. A lot of guys, you know, dig to a certain depth and I try going a little bit more. I need to be, I guess I'm a little bit of a control freak. I need to know what's going on and need to be there and hands on all the time. And I think that's what drives the idea of me still being that one man crew is, you know, I have to do it. So even if it's out of my wheelhouse, I somehow try finding a way to make it happen.
Coming back to the work that you do, specifically that Aurora project. So people need to, if you're listening to this, go check Adam's Instagram out there, Lilley LLC, and check out the pool, patio, fire pit, pergola, in-light patio design. It really speaks for itself. And Adam, can you kind of walk us through that design and specifically the what you did with the inlight installation there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was designing everything by hand. I have my chart pack markers, and again, I have a BFA, so I was always drawing stuff. And I finally dove into UVision and using 3D rendering. And I don't even know the hours I spent designing that thing. My girlfriend can attest that I would design something and throw it out, design something and throw it out. The pool isn't kind of an odd shape. There was a water feature and a raised wall in an odd area where you couldn't do things. And then it just clicked to kind of cut off that pool wall, just cut it off and build in a different area, the raised section. So we did that, and all of a sudden the flow kind of just came. John, the client, is a super nice guy, and so sadly he had lost his wife. And when we were doing the inlight, we were calling kind of Starry Night, and so it just all of a sudden out of nowhere, I thought, what if we actually put a starry night in it? So then I looked up, you know, her birthday and what star sign she was. And one of the great things about Inlight is they have different sizes and brightnesses. So the Hive versus the Fusion give out a different, you know, brightness. So between different sizes, different brightnesses, you could actually create that effect of a star, you know, star night. So we did that. I put the drone up in the air and then made sure everything was where it needed to be and installed it. And then at the end of the project, I told him that, you know, this way it's kind of always part of it. She'll always be part of this yard.
That's really awesome. And the thought process that went into that is it really puts the personal touch for that customer into that project. What was his reaction when you told him about that, or when he found out?
So I got a little scared at first because there was almost no reaction, none at all. And I was like, uh-oh, did I mess up? And then after I got home, he texted, and we're, especially as men, we maybe aren't always in touch with our feelings as well, so don't show it much. He texted a very, very kind message saying that he was actually overwhelmed and didn't know what to say, and that's why he fell silent. So it was nice. Again, he's become a friend, as most of the clients do, and his daughter as well have said that it just has become so special. And so I'm glad. It makes it so rewarding. All the headaches and stress and blood blisters and everything else, it's worth it when you get to build something like that and know it's going to last and be part of their family and their story for a long time to come.
Getting into the installation side of things, anything that you want to talk about in terms of installation methods, techniques, anything that you live by in your business?
Obviously, everybody knows base and compaction. You can lay a beautiful patio, but if it's not built on something sturdy, then it won't matter in a couple of years. In Connecticut, we do have a lot of freeze thaw cycles, not even just harsh ones, but a lot of them up and down, up and down. So you got to make sure that you're isolating your project from the natural elements. I do open graded base. I think that's a big thing for a lot of guys now. I think that's a no-brainer. On days when it rains or snows, you could still lay pavers. If you're working with sand and three-quarter process, that's not necessarily fun, and you can't compact it well, and it's a pain. So open graded base, proper excavation, everybody knows, the right way to do it. So you just do it. You do right by the customer. And I tell the customer the most important part of the project is the stuff you don't even see. Whether it's a patio or retaining wall, whatever it is, it's the stuff that you'll never even know is there. And this is the first year, I think, because of COVID, everyone's home, that people have constantly said to me, I can't believe what goes into this. And that kind of also is that selling point of when they talk to the next person, it's you should see how he does this, because not everybody follows the rules, So when you're bidding, they don't necessarily know that. A lot of people look at that bottom line number. If, we see retaining wall fail, again, Caleb Allman, he loves to point out all those fails. And I look at them and everybody knows they're horror stories. It's terrifying from the contractor end. So it's all about doing it right and educating the customer, because this is not their field. They don't know. So if they're not, again, as I said, now that people are home, they see it. But it used to be, they leave in the morning, they come back at night, they don't know the difference, especially if you have multiple guy crew and you're faster. You dig out, you put your base, you're done. They don't know if there's 2 inches or 8 inches. They have no clue, and they don't know what's the right way anyway. So I think it's about honesty and educating the client on here's what we do, here's why we do it. ICPI, NCMA have become huge tools. I got my ICPI certification, still waiting on the NCMA certification to get enough square footage of walls. But I tell people all the time, like, hey, this is ICPI, this is what it is. And I abide by their rules, for a reason. This is going to last you now for obviously things are going to come up, but 5-10 years, no problem.
We talked a bit about equipment at the beginning of the episode, but any equipment or tools, say, coming up in your business that you're wanting to invest in?
So I got the Ditch Witch, I got the Cat 304, I've got my saw, my IQ saw, got the M-Quip. I'm in pretty good shape. The only problem is I run old trucks. Last year, I lost my first company truck, which was an 85 Ford 6.9 IDI diesel, and that was a workhorse. I missed that truck. The engine blew on it, and now I'm running OBS Ford 7.3 Power Strokes, a 95 and a 96. They're old, but they work. I am definitely thinking it's going to be time for a truck at some point. It's, I kind of bought the carriage before the horse with the trailers and the mini excavator and all that kind of stuff. So far, I've been lucky. I can work on the trucks myself. That's a big plus. Getting into a newer truck, it gets scary because it's not as easy to work on yourself, and they're not cheap. They're a big ticket item.
Adam, as we close out this interview, I've got 2 more questions for you. First one being, do you have any mentors that you'd want to shout out, or people that you follow online or even offline that have kind of helped you along the way? Anybody that you want to give a shout out?
Absolutely. So obviously Richard, RC Outdoor, I came across his Instagram a while ago, and that's just obviously inspiring. Roger, London Stoneworks, he's in Chicago. He does really cool work, and he's in porcelain work, and I've talked to him a bunch. And then actually going to cross industries and go over to actual like stone. Matt, Margin Mallet, and Bryce, Stone Bear Mason. They are both extremely skilled guys. I've met both of them, and seeing their work. I mean, Margin Mallet, he could take a boulder and I don't know how he does it personally. He shapes that thing. Go check his page out. Just look at the detail in his work. It is truly inspiring. And although we kind of play on different, ball fields, his skill, his attention to detail, all that is super inspiring. Yeah, and Bryce, he works alone a lot too. So it's these one-man shows that they're inspiring to see what they're doing and keeps me fueled up,
Obviously, you've learned a lot since starting your business. So I want to ask you, what is that one thing that you wish you knew from the very beginning? The one thing that you know now that you wish you knew from the very start?
Patience, and probably balancing idealism with realism. In our heads, we can get some lofty ideas, lofty goals, and things don't always go the way you want. So be patient with it. Take the time to educate yourself, and just, again, be open, honest, clear with the clients. And I don't know, you're going to have to work hard. It's hardscaping, not easy scaping, and just be patient. And at the end, it's always worth it. Always worth it.
Adam, thank you so much for your time today. Where can our audience learn more about you, everything that you've got going on over there?
So I have the Instagram page, Lilley LLC, and I'm hopefully getting the website up sometime, again, if I can carve out some time to go through it. But yeah, so for now, it's Lilley LLC, and you could DM me or look at what I'm doing and message me on there. I'm always happy to talk to any of the guys who are out there.